This country has the capacity to deliver in its dream if we just focus on it. I say that 2.2 million barrels of oil has been too long in production. We need to move on. We quote those numbers as if the whole world ends in 2.2. This country has the capacity to grow 4 million barrels of oil. We need to find out what it takes for us to grow 4 million barrels of oil. The time for individual selective creativity has come, because only that is going to make you survive in a very competitive environment. I ask you to help us make Nigeria a Japan of sorts. For us to do this, we have to reduce the time that we spend on bureaucracy. I have very little patience for bureaucracy. And those of you who have dealt with me know that I like to cut to the chase. And if anybody stands in your way and gives you bureaucracy rather than speed and service, please come to me. You will have a hearing. It is absolutely important that the vision of this country is to drive public officials to provide service and not to provide roadblocks. Training of Nigerians is key. The oil sector has done very well in this. We've come a long way from, like the distinguished Minister said, we've come a long way from 50 years ago. But we're still not there. We're still not in a position where I'm looking for a wholesale Nigerian company that one day can compete with ExxonMobil or Chevron here in this space, with all their potencies, with its own ability to provide locally its own rates. I'm looking for that space, and it's not too much to ask. We need to begin to think big. But training is key, and I urge everybody who impacts on this, from the oil companies who give scholarship to NCDMB to PTDF, to continue to dialogue and joint venture with the academia. There is too much gap between the academia and the actual industry, and we need to bring them together to be able to make some veritable difference. People have complained about access to the NCD fund, and I've directed management of NCD to review the operating model for the NCDF so that it's readily available to those who have very unique proposals trying to grow local content. This fair is going to focus in some senses on transparency. Transparency is key. Buhari is synonymous with transparency. We are focusing on that. And in an era where the only stories you hear about the oil companies are stories of grafts, of gaps, of difficulties, that's not the oil industry that I want to bequeath to this country. We want an oil industry that is transparent, and transparency should move away from avoidance. In other words, the fact that we hide things from you and so get away with it is not transparency. Transparency must be that we must open up our doors to you to self-discover and correct those things that we think we're doing wrong. And so one of the steps I've taken is to ask most of the agencies, including NNPC, to work very collaboratively with groups like Naiti, whom I found enjoyable working with, because although they may critique you and find out your gaps, but unless you get those criticisms, and we get quite a lot of that from our bosses in the assembly, but unless you work collaboratively with a mind to correct, you're not going to be able to make progress. So where we see legislators as the difficult parts, we must see them as joint venture partners in this whole process, and that's how we're going to deal. So if you want local content, you've got to provide enabling environment. So when I hear the whole talk about moving headquarters and all that, I totally support that we need to look at a new model. But I'm also going to put on you, the recipients of those movements, the responsibility to provide a requisite security environment for this to harness. The second is that we will encourage what I call an antelope leapfrog. And so we cannot afford the chase that requires a gradual process. We are so far behind in everything you think of, from infrastructure to refining to production model, everything, that we need to basically be leapfrogging like an antelope in a haste.